The first sponsorship on Warden's Watch is Trailerrunner Wireless Internet, available in Coos County and Washington County, Maine. High-speed internet for rural areas. And they're the company I work for other than podcasting, and I thank you for your support. This is high-speed internet for rural areas, making my podcast happen and making businesses happen in remote places, as well as bringing technology to you folks when you live out in the country. Please go to mytrailrunner.com and like the page on Facebook as well. That would help them a lot and help me to continue Warden's Watch. Guidefitter.com. Guidefitter, bridging you to the outdoors while providing a quality platform for guides and outfitters for you to select from. Guidefitter is the best place to get discounts on gear if you're an outdoor professional. As a game warden, I'm a member of the Outdoor Government Program, which has over 80 quality brands to get discounts from. It's free to join. Yes, free to join. And all you need to do is prove that you're an active outdoor government employee. There are all kinds of products available. Apparel, boots, archery equipment, optics, backpacks, cameras, watches, ammo, anything, you name it. And while you're there, check out the articles, information, and stories that you'll be inspired from. So before you head out to work in the outdoors or start your next outdoor adventure, check out Guidefitter.com and get discounts on your everyday or every so often outdoor equipment. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders for Guidefitter. Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other game wardens on our adventures, protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch. Welcome to Episode 3, The Colonel and I. This podcast is going to encompass pretty much what most of my podcasts are going to be. They're going to be interviews. I only have so many stories. I think I have a lot of good stories. I think my interaction back and forth with people that I interview will be great because I have the same experience as they do, and I can share those experiences. And you may hear a story or two twice just because I'm relating to those guys. And one person I can relate to the most, and the place I thought I should start, A, because he's a really good friend, and B, because he's the Colonel of New Hampshire Fish and Game. And I like to start at the top, and there's no better place to start than Colonel Kevin Jordan. And this is what that interview is going to be about. You can see through the interview that we are very good friends. We have been. We worked side by side for a very long time, did a lot of cases together. I learned a tremendous amount from the Colonel because he is a really, really good investigator. He's a really good prosecutor. And we used to have a thing that I caught him, he cleaned him. So it was so much easier for me. And with New Hampshire Fish and Game, conservation officers prosecute their own cases. As with a lot of small police departments, some rural troopers, we prosecute our own cases. So we're the attorney in the lower courts. So we have to have that skill set. And Kevin had that skill set, and he was very good at it. He had a lot of experience from Whitefield PD, where he spent some time. He came over to New Hampshire Fish and Game. He was a sergeant for Whitefield PD. He prosecuted their cases. He did some undercover drug work in his day. So I just was like a sponge when it came to Kevin. So the other guys in District 1 were awesome as well, but Kevin was the closest, and he kind of took me under his wing. And in 1997, when I was shot in the line of duty, I had a year-long process of getting back integrated into being a conservation officer. There was a lot of challenges, emotional, physical, that came along that way. And I found what kind of true friend Kevin Jordan was to me. He counseled me, we talked a lot, and he helped me integrate back into that law enforcement career that I wanted to do for so long, and I loved it. And that's the reason I made a 23-year career, because of counseling and friends like Colonel Kevin Jordan. Otherwise, I couldn't have done it. So, and it's really important in this day and age to understand how to deal with your feelings, because I think a lot of the problems that we see society now is bottled up feelings. We have counseling available. We have friends available. And if you have those types of friends that you can share those intimate feelings with no matter what, and always be treated the same, I think it's just so important. And I think that's kind of letting the pressure off when it comes to emotions. We have these critical incidents, and it's just so important to get those feelings out instead of bottle them up. Because if you bottle them up, it's kind of like shaking a can of Coke and then opening it up, I think. So that's my opinion. Kevin helped me get back into being a conservation officer. You're going to see through this interview the relationships that we have, that we've built over the years, and the friendship we have. And I'm so appreciative of that, because I don't think I would have made it through. So I hope you enjoy this segment. So this is the first interview, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Kevin, to the show.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it seems kind of weird having you on.
Yeah, it seems kind of weird being on.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever think you were going to be Colonel?
No.
Okay.
No, but I didn't think I'd ever be in a podcast either. So these are two new things for me.
Two new
no,
things.
I never expected to be a
Colonel's
Colonel.
not being real new to you either, is
No,
it? No.
no.
It's kind of old. Podcasting's new.
Podcasting's brand new tonight. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but we go back quite a ways.
Yes,
so,
we do.
To my
Yes,
beginning.
we do. Yeah.
You were on a year ahead of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched you come in. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
was, I still think back on some of those days and laugh when I saw how you, how you changed throughout the year all the way to the end, and then watch you the night that you retired and kind of think about the difference. It was pretty.
Yeah, there was a lot of differences, wasn't there?
Yes, there was.
A lot of different priorities.
You did. Yeah. Yeah. They changed and evolved over the years as your life changed, and that was kind of fun to be a part of.
No doubt.
And it happened to all of us. It was just, you were very animated and very live, so we could see it happening, and it was fun to show.
Yeah, and all the guys that that were in District 1 were older and watching.
They were,
Yeah.
yeah. They had actually gotten to about what you would get to in about 6 to 7 years. They were already at that point, so we all had kind of lived that life, and it was fun to watch you do it. Plus, it set the bar pretty high because the lieutenant focused on you, and we got away with murder.
You get to do whatever you want.
That's right. That's right.
Then I got my butt chewed every other day.
Yes, you did. Yeah, not only were you a new guy, a new trainee in the district, but you made the fatal error of taking the what would be now the lieutenant, his old patrol area, so no matter what, it couldn't be done right. You didn't disappoint him. You didn't do it anywhere near right.
I did it.
So even though you did, and eventually he would come around to see that, but in the beginning, it's fun to.
Yeah, and I try to give guys, their head, so to speak, to let them go and do their thing, because I remember, always being, you should have been here, you should have been there.
That's right. Yeah. Why were you over here when you should have been down here? This is where the activity happens.
That's right. And to a degree, he was right, but
he was.
He always told me I pulled a rose out of certain parts of my body.
That's
every time
right.
he was going to rip my head off. So,
when actually what it was you were working the same patrol area, the same poachers, but in a different way, and it was working. I think that was the hardest part for him. Really, was to understand that he might have been wrong, and that was fun for us to watch as well.
No doubt,
no
doubt.
Yeah,
and now that when I was a lieutenant, I totally understand that, because every time I wanted to say, that's not how you do it, I kind of tried to bite my tongue and say,
fight back. That's right.
Yeah, that's a different way of looking at it, Wayne.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So it's kind of funny to go that full circle
and see. That's right, and that's a full career actually, if you think about it, because you start from the beginning, making all the young man mistakes and having your priorities, being that of a young man. And then you watch it as a lieutenant. You complain about it as you go through it with your lieutenant. Then you become one, and you start cycling through the same thing. So it's kind of
no doubt,
start to finish. So
no
that's
doubt.
a full career.
And survive that.
And survive it. That's right. Yeah, all the way around.
Man.
Yeah, it was different. I can think of the one time, the best example of that was the night hunting case that you made in Bishop Brook. You remember that?
Oh, I'll never forget it. It was the first time I got to choose my own setup. And,
And I remember the Lieutenant Eric Stoll calling me up that night right here, and I was in Lancaster. So he calls me up because he knew I was friends with you, and he says, yeah, Wayne's picked a spot. He said, we're going to go up. It's a waste of our time. He must have said that 100 times. Waste of our time. He's going to go up to Bishop Brook, and nobody jacks on Bishop Brook. They haven't jacked a deer up there. So I'm trying to help you out. So I said, well, Lieutenant, sometimes people change, and he might get a new one. No, it's going to be a waste of our time. But the only way he's going to learn, the best way for him to learn, is go put his foot in his mouth. So we're going to let him do that. We're not going to embarrass him when he doesn't do anything. We're just going to go up there
and when he didn't like the spot, I said, okay, we'll go somewhere else. No,
he was intent. He wanted that was going to teach you a lesson.
Yeah,
is what that was. And so we're set up that night, and you're in the truck out in the pit because he's mad at you.
And I always got in trouble when I was sitting in the truck because he thought I was sleeping.
Fell asleep. Yeah, and he and I run the decoy, and he can't hear a thing. He's deaf in the post, so we got the decoy out there, and he's going to run it because he knows what he's doing, and I'm just supposed to watch and hit the vehicle. And we're a long ways from the vehicle, from where a vehicle would come in, and it was late, and we're kind of talking and joking and laughing. And he's showing you, though. Time is ticking by. Yep, this is another hour he's seeing with no activity. He'll learn that, there are better places to be, and lo and behold, a truck comes in to look at, and he gets a little excited in the beginning, but the guy doesn't do anything. The truck is just sitting there, and it's lit up the deer decoy, and so he figures out right away that this is just a guy that's going to look at the deer, and this is a waste of our time, and he's wiggling the deer, and all of a sudden the truck puts it in reverse and drives off, and he's like, there, see, that's the only activity you're going to see tonight. What a waste of my time. This is stupid. I should have told him, but this is the best way for him to learn, Kevin. He'll learn this way, and he went on and on. And lo and behold, the truck comes back. And what we didn't know and would find out later is the kid was convinced it was a real deer. He didn't have a firearm or a weapon with him, remember?
Yeah.
So he went home to get his bow and arrow and come back and shoot this deer. And we didn't know that at the time. So the truck is back. He says, and I remember, I'll never forget it. Eric says, good. He went home, got his wife. He's going to show his wife the dumb-looking decoy. So, and he's still working the decoy. He's got his controller going and his hands going, and he's looking up over the log that we're behind, and he's watching the deer, and he's working the tail and doing all, and I'm thinking, why is he bothering with this if this is what he really believes this is? And I'm watching the guy. All of a sudden, I can see, and with the headlights reflecting kind of off the bank into the truck, I can see the guy reaching for something on the gun rack.
And how close were you?
Oh, we were a ways away, but I could see that.
Uh-huh.
And so, Eric continues to talk to me. Go chase him off, Kevin. Go out and make him drive off. So he could ruin it if someone else. And I'm trying to tell Eric, settle down. I think the guy's going to shoot. And he isn't hearing me. He isn't listening.
No, he can't hear.
No, he's still running the deer. You're back in the truck wondering what's going on because you can't see any of this. And he's still running the deer. And he says, I told you to go out and chase him off. I'm like, and I keep saying to him, shh, listen, watch. He's going to shoot. And sure enough, the door opens. And this grabs his attention, Eric. So he's watching the guy thinking, he says, oh, great. Now he's going to walk up to it. And he's got something in his hand. Then I realize he's got a bow. And I thought, it's the first time I see a bow at night. And I'm thinking, how are we going to know when he goes off? We're not going to hear the gun go.
That's the only bow case I ever had.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, just about the time I'm wondering how I'm going to figure this out, and Eric is biting in my ear to go chase him off, all of a sudden I see the guy, there's all kinds of fast movement, and the guy's throwing everything back in the truck, and I thought, oh, he's already shot. He's leaving. So then I hit him, and Eric is wondering what is going on. I scream out there to try and stop the guy, and Eric comes running out. He calls Wayne. He calls you, 3 times on the radio.
Yeah, it wasn't quick enough.
No. So we finally go out, and the truck is racing. The motor's racing. He's trying to get it in reverse, and he can't. And I get up to the passenger side. I pull out my flashlight. I'm going to break the window. I can't open the door. I'm going to break the window. And all of a sudden, the guy sees me and throws his hands up and throws the clutch in, and it's just winding down the throttle. And I'll never forget it. Eric goes up to the other side, and he calls the guy by name. He said, what are you doing out here? And it was his nephew. And he had, in fact, shot at the deer, and it was a night hunting case and in a place that we'd have never made a night hunting case, according to Eric. So that was pretty good. Yeah. That was a good – someone learned a lesson that night, but it wasn't Wayne.
No, it wasn't.
It was pretty good.
I was pretty psyched that spot I picked. It was like one of the first spot I picked in my patrol area, and to get a night hunting with a bow. I mean, I think that was my only bow case my whole career.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of those.
No. Saw a couple muzzle loaders.
We did. Yeah, we had a couple muzzle loaders, but we never had a bow. That was the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was pretty exciting. I mean,
it was.
We're talking, I can still feel the adrenaline starting to pump, catching the poachers.
The best part of that was, him saying all night long what a waste of time it was, and we weren't going to do anything, and then you made the case. That was the best part of it. So that was a good lesson for all of us to learn that, you think you got it figured out, and a new guy comes into town, and does things a little different, and you know what? It paid off. It worked out well. We'd have never gotten that kid.
Yep. No,
if we hadn't done it that way.
Try to live by that. And I will say it is tough because you pretty much know what's going on usually, but you're right. A different way of looking at it.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember your first case?
My first night hunting case was I was a trainee with Todd Bogardus at the time, and we got a kid. We made the case. We didn't see him shoot that night. We got evidence of it and made the case through an interview, and I was pretty proud of that. That was our first case.
How'd you get the tip? Was it?
We got a call that a vehicle had been there, and Todd had an idea of what the vehicle was, but he wasn't a very strong interview, and he knew that. So people didn't like talking to him. So we knew that it was this kid, this local kid that he had done business with before.
Was there evidence of a deer being shot in the field?
Oh yeah. We knew there'd been a deer shot. We had a witness that heard the shot, saw the vehicle. We went up there the next morning to answer to the report that we had gotten, and there was a blood spot and a drag. All the evidence was there, so we knew a deer had been shot. So he did a little bit of background work and figured out it was probably this kid, and we were going to have to rely on an interview and a little bit of bull to try and convince this kid that we had more in a case than really what we had. So that's something that I was stronger at than he was. So I convinced him to take me there, and we'd talk to this kid, and we got in there. I put together a whole folder with a bunch of blank paper in it, so we thought we had a huge case file with lots of evidence, and we went in and convinced that kid of that, talking to him. And about 3/4 of the way through the interview, the kid just confessed. And Todd was elated. He was pretty excited about that because this is a kid he wanted to get forever. And, it's funny. The other day I was sitting in my office. I see all the summonses that all the guys write. And I signed a summons that had that kid's name on it. They had grabbed Chris McKee, the new officer up there, had grabbed this kid for another deer hunting. I think it was Chris, for another deer hunting offense this past fall. So he's still at it 20 years later.
Didn't learn.
No, he's still trying to do it 20 years later. But so we made
still
that.
Getting caught at it. That's
good. Right. Yeah, that's right. So we made that case when I was a trainee. That was the first. I think that was the first night hunting case I made. But in my patrol, I made at least one a year.
You were
every single fall. We had one.
And I remember that time, was it 13 night hunting cases you made through interviews?
Yeah, through a roadkill deer.
Yeah.
A person took a roadkill deer home and never got a tag. We heard that started with a tip that someone had gotten a deer and they had burned up the remains in a pit, or actually a fire in their backyard, a fire pit in their backyard. And so we thought it was all really going to turn into nothing. But we went up because it was slow. It was in the middle of the winter. So we went up to interview this young gal, and it was her home. And I said, I got this crazy rumor that you'd burned a deer up. And she laughed. She said, well, who would do that? I said, well, you're right, but we gotta look into this. So I said, I'd feel better if you just showed me that pit. If you have a fire pit. She says, well, yeah, I've got one out back. I said, I'd like to go out and look at that. Well, we went out and looked, and she didn't realize, obviously, at the time that when you burn a body, even a human body up, not everything burns. The bones don't burn. So if you know what you're looking for, you can find that. So I got down on my knee, and I started pawing through this thing, and lo and behold, I started finding bone fragments. I thought, there is some truth to this.
You better hope this is a deer.
That's right. So I'm talking to her about that, and I said, I'd really like to look in the shed now because the person said that it was cut up in the shed, and she said, well, she was kind of hesitant about that, but she eventually let us in. There was blood on the floor. I found blood on the floor. So this whole thing started to develop, and before we were done, there were multiple offenders involved, and they were using her place as kind of the headquarters. And so we had two of the individuals involved, poachers actually, that got mad at each other. So the one started ratting the other one out. And before we got all done, we had moose cases. We had, I think there were 13 night hunted deer. This was a group of guys that were going all over the North Country at night jacking deer.
Yeah, I remember that search warrant. We hit two different places.
Oh yeah, we had two different. Yeah, Vermont. They had jacked a bunch of deer in Vermont, so it involved Vermont deer cases. So yeah, that turned into a case that fit into a 3-ring binder, and people paid thousands of dollars. All starting with really what was an outlandish report of a roadkill deer that was just taken without a tag.
And sometimes that's how these cases start.
It is how it works. You get big monsters for tax evasion or the Ted Bundys of the world based on a motor vehicle tip. You never know. So it's worth looking into.
And you got to take that information and follow it
and run with it. Yeah.
So even though time and time again it's a bunch of junk information, the time you get it, and it's good information.
Right.
It makes those cases, 13 deer. And
you got to every one of those tips. You just got to have a little bit of faith that it's real and it's a good case. As long as you think that. Sometimes they'll turn out to be not real or not a good case, but then you get these times where you'll get the case of your career, based on what turned out to be just a small tip that started the ball rolling. So you never know. The only way to find out is to follow it.
Do you have a case of your career that comes to your mind, like your top one?
Well, I had some that were fun that I think were the most fun to work, but probably the one that now looking back on was pretty significant. At the time, I didn't think it was much more than just a moose case, a case that involved the president of the Wildlife Federation and at the time, the poacher was, in fact, the leader of the Fish and Game Committee at the legislature. Now, today, that would be a big deal to me because I understand who those people are.
But then you did it.
Back in the field, when I was a warden in the field, I didn't know who these people were, and that, again, involved a lot of investigative, good police work that led up to a grand conclusion that probably caused a lot of gray hairs on a lot of my supervisors, including the person who sat in my seat at the time, the colonel at the time, because he knew.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. The one I'm the most proud of, though, was the snow machiner that Steve Hessard, who was hit and left for dead on a very cold night in the wintertime by a snow machiner, dog sledder. They got hit by a drunken snow machiner and left for dead.
Yeah.
There was a lot of satisfaction in that because, again, we started clothing fragments, really, and paint chips, and we put a guy in jail. So that took a lot of good police work.
That was a lot of engagement.
And it was a lot of cooperation, a lot of combined efforts of the guys in District 1 to find, because had it not been for another snowmobiler that night, I am convinced Steve would have died. Frozo, he was severely injured, broke both of his legs, as you know, traumatically.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, this was a dog sledder guy driving down, and a snowmobile comes up behind him. Whether he planned on buzzing him very high speed,
or didn't even see him, maybe.
Or didn't see him. Maybe he was intoxicated. We couldn't prove that. But he ended up hitting the dog sledder and doing all that damage, breaking both his and leaving him there.
And he would later... in an interview, the individual who did this confessed to traveling at speeds he thinks greater than 70, maybe just shy of 80. So Steve probably got hit at 70 miles an hour from the back. It's just an incredible impact. It's a miracle killing. It struck the dogs, and it just was a mess. And I wasn't involved that night, but I got involved the next day, as you know.
Yep.
And we went up and started with the clothing because we had some paint transfer for the clothing, but we had to secure it because some of them took it back to Maine.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of catch-up work. And then
it was to get the dog sled back from Maine.
And to get the dog sled back so we could do testing on it with paint match. And then you've got a state police lab that's a little skeptical about coming up and matching that until they find out how serious it was. And then
we got red fragments off, and then we
did match the paint.
Every red sled registered in Coas
County, and then you and I started visiting every home. I think when I called dispatch, they said there were 400 of them.
Yeah.
And I said, well, narrow them down to the sleds that are in that general area. So they did that. And I think we started working with like 100 snow machines. So we just started going to people's houses that had a red sled. We banged on the door and said, hey, we'd like to look at your sled if that's okay. And, of course, people looked at us like we had two heads and let us go out and look at their snow machines.
My snowmobile.
But this kid would not. We couldn't get him to call us back.
No.
And
we went to his house like 3, 4, 5 different times.
And it just zeroed in on him. Yeah. And then we realized, he had it hidden away. And finally, we kept turning the heat up, and he hired a defense attorney right away before we ever charged him, and he called us up and said, listen, you got the right guy, and we want to talk to you. It just unfolded. So it was good to go back to Steve and his family and say, hey, we got the guy who did this, and he's going to pay a price for it, because he was in a hospital bed, and he, to this day, never went back to dog sled. It was sad. So, and I remember I didn't know anything about dog sledding teams, and we kept finding these little cloth booties at the scene.
That they put
I couldn't figure out what it was, and I
remember that.
I would find out later that it was boots that they put on these dogs to protect their feet from the crust. So it was just.
I remember picking those up, going, "What the heck are these?"
And he hit a Moody sled, which is a big deal for those of you that know about dog sleds. Moody sleds are real rare, and he was on a Moody sled when he got hit, or riding in the back of the truck. So.
Didn't his friends, when he got back together, didn't they get him a Moody sled to replace that?
They all put it together and asked me to come to the ceremony to replace it for him. So we did that, and we asked the snow machine community to to come to bat to help us, because they were taking a real significant hit for that, because they thought they were all wild, drunken snow machiners, and this is the consequence from it, when really it was just like any group, a small percentage doing things they weren't supposed to do. So we used that to our advantage when we went to the snowmobile community and said, hey, you got to help us put this together, and we got to get the guy who did this so we can prove that snowmobilers aren't like this as a rare individual, and they were a big help. So it went on for quite a while, and there was a lot of pressure on us to solve that.
It was quite a reward, too, if I remember.
There was, that we paid. I don't remember the cash, but I remember two people that gave us little bits of information, which would later lead to these guys or help lead to them. We ended up, I was insistent on paying them because that was well advertised.
Right.
And you and I went around and delivered them, remember?
Yep, I do.
Delivered the rewards, so people were pretty happy about it. Yeah, and we got the guy who did it. And lo and behold, when we found the sled, the paint matched the color on the sled, and we actually found damage and stripes and paint transfer on the sled from his clothing. It was an ironclad.
And that was my first time working with the crime lab that came up to the garage and removed all that stuff.
Yeah, did all the paint work. They actually got right into it. It was interesting for them because they'd never done anything like that, so they really got into it. We all learned, I think.
Right, and I think we used that. I used that in my career later down when we had snow machines hit people and things like that. So when there was helmet transfer, the lab's been willing to come up, and it's almost like they know what to expect now. There's the garage, here's the tools, and start collecting.
This is what we need, because they certainly were talented enough and had the skills to do it. They just had never been asked to do it at that level. So
I think we built a good relationship with the crime lab.
We did.
And they like coming up to do something different, out of the norm.
Right,
so.
So that one I got a lot of satisfaction out of. I always felt good looking back on that because, again, that involved a lot of really good police work.
Absolutely.
It was fun to work it. There was a lot of pressure on it, but it was fun when you solved it.
Right. Solving the cases, that's always been your forte. It's the investigator.
That's the part I like the best. Getting I was talking to a couple of troopers that are retired the other day about that very fact. They said, that was looking back on a full career. To this day, of all the things that I've been able to accomplish, that's the part I will always look back with the fondest memory part.
Yeah.
It's nice to get guys that think they got away with it, start with nothing, and before you get all done, you make a case, and nobody got away with anything. It's kind of
Yeah, that's why I nicknamed you the Beagle.
Yeah, it was.
You get on a track, you wouldn't let go.
Wouldn't let go, yeah.
I remember working 24 hours straight with you on an investigation. You were like, we're getting closer.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't we need to sleep? No, we can't sleep. The tracks are hot.
You'll sleep when you're dead. We got plenty of time.
That's right. The tracks are hot. We got to go, Wayne.
Yeah. And there's a lot of truth to that. That now.
Yeah.
You watch television on these
first
homicide.
24.
That's right. These homicide cases were no different. It's just they're investigating people. We were investigating animals. But the stuff was the same, really. The evidence collection and the time factor and jumping on stuff when it was fresh was just as important in these cases as it was in that. So it gave you a good opportunity to do it. And it was kind of neat because it didn't keep me awake at night. A dead deer didn't keep me awake at night. A dead child would have.
Right.
So a dead deer didn't do that. But by the same token, it meant a lot to us to get it resolved and to bring those people to justice and to do it fair and square. Not to cut corners, but to do it the way you're supposed to do it. That's the part that's proud. So.
Yeah, I know. I went to homicide investigation the first day. I told them every time the deer is poached.
That's right.
But I got funny looks from all those detectives.
I bet you did, yeah.
Yeah, and I still get crap about it today.
Yeah.
They still give me a hard time. Yeah, it's a homicide, Wayne, right?
That's right.
I'm like,
That's
right,
it
is, actually.
It is.
And you got to treat it that way.
That's right. They do, you think about it, they do exactly the same thing when they get there.
Exactly.
They're figuring out where the shot came from. They're looking for shell casings and evidence of it. It's just what we do.
Splatter.
Yep. They're looking for the point of impact and what people did afterwards.
They're photographing it the same way.
Yep. Yeah, and we're doing exactly.
And we do it more
thing.
Often because we have more dead deer than they have
That's right.
people generally.
That's right. Yeah,
I think we've become pretty dang proficient at it.
And they have realized that because today, state police, we work more closely with state police today than we ever have historically in all the years that these two agencies have existed. So, it just makes perfect sense to combine the resources and the skill sets that each group has and work together towards a common good.
Absolutely.
And that's what we do now. So our dive team is used a lot by them. Our dogs are used by them. We use them when we do our searches, for people and the helicopter work they help us out with. So it just makes good sense.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a ship. I just saw that picture on with me, you at the state police helicopter, and I'm trying. It was in
Lafayette.
Lafayette.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
So just so we got to tell this story. So it's on Loudon race weekend. So it's a beautiful weekend, and it's weird because it's in the summertime, or actually in the early fall. But we have a guy on top of Mount Lafayette, which is a high mountain in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, in the Notch. It's up. I think it's up a little over 4,000, certainly over 4,000 feet. I think it's like 5,000 feet. But this gentleman dies of exposure, which is a sad story. He froze to death, basically, early fall. So we know where he is. We got to go up and get him. So we hike up to the summit. There's a handful of us that would later become, the picture is funny when I look at it now because they're all lieutenants or above. But back then we were all field guys.
And a lot of them retired.
They
except
have.
for you and Nealon.
Yeah, me and Nealon and I are still here, but everybody else is gone. So we hike up the mountain, and we get up there and we find him. He's tucked into a rock, and of course it's no easy task to lug someone down. We didn't have that many people, so our options were to get a bunch of people to come up there and help get him or fly him out. So we decided we would ask for the flight service. So we called down there. We can't get the guard, but lo and behold, state police helicopters over at the racetrack doing what they do at the races when they go with a helicopter. And they're a little bored, I think, quite frankly. So a trooper in a full uniform decides this would be a fun trip. We'll fly up to the top of the mountain and pick this guy up and help these guys out. So he does just that, and he takes at the time another road trooper who would later become the commander at Troop F, Todd Landry, is with him. I think it's the only time I ever saw Todd on the summit of any mountain. And they fly up to the summit of Mount Washington of Lafayette. So they're hovering over Lafayette, going to land. We had a couple of cairns in the way. And for those of you who don't know, a cairn is a big pile of rocks above tree line to indicate a trail mark.
Which come in very handy, don't they?
They do.
That's a whole different story.
That's right. But they line up to make a path, a set of arrows up there, and they're very important. So there's a couple of them up there that you can see, so people hiking. But when you're going to land a helicopter up there, they're in the way. And so I'll never forget Nealon kicking those things over. That would be like us sawing down a tree with a trail marker on it. He kicks the things over so we can land the helicopter. You land the helicopter. We get the poor guy inside the helicopter. We seatbelt him in sitting straight up. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Sitting straight up in a helicopter, and then someone decides at that moment that we ought to get a picture of all of us with a state police helicopter on the summit of Mount Lafayette, because when does that ever happen?
Yeah.
So we all line up in front. That's the picture that Wayne's referring to. We all have now. And we're kneeling down in front of the helicopter, and they take this, and you see the trooper there with his uniform on, the two troopers with uniforms on.
Well, this isn't the time when we all had cameras, phones, I think that probably came up with them or somebody.
That's right. Somebody had a camera.
It's not like a quick snapshot because we had a phone.
So we pose for it, and they take that picture. And then we flew him out, and we hiked down, and that was the end of a good day. So it would be months later, I think that.
And Todd had to walk out because the weight difference, right?
That's right.
Todd
we couldn't fly in.
We couldn't fly back out.
That's right. So they had to walk. Everybody had to walk back out, and they flew this poor deceased guy down to the bottom. But what was bizarre was just before Christmas of that year, our director at the time comes down and he hands all of us a calendar, and a state police calendar, and lo and behold, here's that picture of that we took on Mount Lafayette on the calendar. It was the main picture on the calendar. And if you look at the helicopter, you can see this poor dead guy inside the helicopter, seatbelted in. State police didn't realize that.
Waiting for us.
Yeah, he didn't. He thought it was another live guy. So that went all over the state and all over New England as their calendar. And I said to my director, "Should we tell him about that picture? Because that's gone." And he said, "Nah, we'll just let that go." Yeah. So we all have an 8x10 of that framed, and that was a pretty neat search and rescue.
Yeah, definitely a neat search and rescue. So. You had quite a few search and rescues, haven't you?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did a lot of that up in the North Country, that's for sure. Yeah. Another memorable one was under the chin of the old man with a helicopter that landed with one Skag. Another
awesome picture, though.
Yeah, it was a picture that, went around New England. Actually, it was in Manchester Union, and we have it at our headquarters. We couldn't talk to them. We didn't have communications with them like we do today.
And that was that old Huey from Vietnam era.
It was, yeah. And we had a guy who fell off the ledge up there and hit his head significantly. He was bleeding from his ears, and there's a good indication of a fractured skull. He was abusive, which is typical of a severe head injury. He was sick. So we decided there was no way. Up under the old man, all those rocks are afloat. They're all loose, so it's a dangerous place to hike, and there was just no way that we were going to get him down and have him survive that. So we called down to, at the time, Rick Estes and said, "Hey, we got to have a helicopter." And he said, "Yeah, I'll call for the guard." And we had new GPSs at the time. We were still experimenting with them, and he told myself and, again, Jim Nealon, you guys find a landing zone. Well, if you ever look at the side of that mountain the next time you go up through the notch, try to figure out where you'd land a Huey. There's just no place to do it. So, and we knew he was coming, and we were hurrying, and they were scurrying down the mountain with this as fast as they could with this poor kid in a litter, and we were ahead of them trying to figure out with flagging where we were going to land this thing. And all of a sudden I looked up, and it's coming. It's in the notch. You can see it, and we couldn't land it anywhere. So we got the greatest outcropping of rock we could find, and we waited for it to approach, and it was just like something out of the movies. I'll never forget it. It came up, and he hovered right in front of it looking at us, and we're up, I forget how many thousands of feet of deck or not. And then he gives us and he's looking right across at us. We're standing on this rock outcrop, and we're basically putting our hands up saying, this is all we got, And he gave me a thumbs up, and he went right straight up. And by then, the crew had reached us with this wounded guy, and he turned that thing and parallel parked it and slowly started hovering back down. And I realized he's going to set that Skag on that rock, and the door is slowly starting to slide open. So, of course, the rotor blades are blowing at 200 miles an hour. And what we didn't know at the time, we would find out later, is there's a group of people there, so we shuttle them all back. Well, in that group is a UPI photographer, a professional photographer. No one told us that. So even though he's sent off in a different direction, he's getting some incredible photos that would later be in all the newspapers and all the news. And so this thing comes down. As soon as that Skag hits the rock, we pop up, and we're sliding this guy in. If a gust of wind had ever come up, it would have killed us all. But we got this guy in there, and off it flew. Of course, we're high-fiving the guy's going to survive. This is how he's going to survive.
That's the best chance he's got.
And he's flying down through the notch, and Estes calls us and wants to know where we landed it. And we quickly swore everybody to secrecy up on the rock because we knew he'd kill us, what we actually had just done. So we got down there, and we told him that, he couldn't see where this thing had landed. We told him we were all set, and it took off, and all was good. And we went home and kind of laughed to ourselves, thinking we got away with it. The next morning, I went out to the end of my driveway to get the Manchester Union, and that was the front page picture, was that helicopter, that Skag, and that Skag on the rock, and my phone rang, and it was Estes. And he was not a happy man. He was laughing, but he was not a happy man. And the sad part of that was it went well, so he looked like a hero. Had it not gone well, they would have held him completely responsible for that.
Absolutely. So, you remember if the victim lived?
He did live. He lost both retinas from the impact, the swelling in the head, and he survived it. He never made a full recovery, but he wouldn't have survived in him.
Right.
Yeah, he had some significant
head injuries and heart attacks. Helicopters.
The only chance they have for survival, which is true, And in his case, it saved his life. Yeah.
The search, I'll never forget it. Which has a little spin to it. But the night the night before Thanksgiving, me and you going across the ridge line of the White Mountains, for the top of Mount Washington,
doing the knife's edge up there.
And you with your nifty GPS, and me wanting to go back because
that was some of the wildest conditions you'd ever see on that time of year. Though, remember, we couldn't read the signs; they were all iced over.
You'd stick your hand out in front of your face; you could barely see that because of the snow blowing.
And we were leading from cairn to cairn. We'd leave. One of us would stay at a cairn, the other one
flashlight
go out and search,
go out and find it, and then we'd piggyback. And I said, "Let's go back. I want to go back." And you look back, and there's no more tracks. They were all gone. You just walk there, and the tracks are gone.
And I said, Wayne, it's quicker if we just keep. It was scary. I was scared. I said it's better if we just trudge on and try to get down into.
And you had a new GPS, which I didn't believe a thing about. I'm like, I don't believe it. Let's just go back. And you look back, there's no tracks, and I'm like, that sucks.
We would have been done.
So we followed the GPS and had to believe in that, and it got us there.
And you fell. Remember, the wind kept blowing us over. It was the most irritating thing in the world. You'd be walking along, and all of a sudden you'd be flat on the ground. The wind would blow you right over. It popped your finger. Remember that? Popped the tendons in your finger.
Yeah, and you were afraid you were going to have to carry me out.
Yeah,
so
I said, don't pop anything else.
And I started screaming, and you were like, he's like, nothing's broken. I'm like, I didn't say anything was broken. You're like, nothing's like. I didn't realize you just didn't want to carry me out.
No, I was trying to convince you that you could get up and walk on whatever you fractured because I wasn't going to carry you.
My knuckle got jammed so bad that it took years. I couldn't even fit my wedding ring over it.
It was awful.
It all blown out.
And I know when we got into tree line and the dust settled and we're trying to change our clothes to get warm, I looked at it and it was at a really funny angle.
Yeah.
And you kept saying to me, you think that's going to be okay? I said, oh, yeah, that's normal. That's completely normal.
I know. You said that a few times to me in my career. That was wrong.
Said, you're going to be fine. You just suck it up. We'll be good.
Yeah. And that later went on to a line search where we found Chaput.
Yes, we did.
She had been murdered.
She had been that was to this day an unsolved homicide.
Yeah.
They're pretty sure they know who did it, but they never arrested a guy for it. Yeah.
And on the line search, I was right beside the guy that found her. So when he called me over and said, Wayne, I think I found her.
Yeah.
So I walked over to him and I said, you did find her, but that's not right.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong here. Yeah. So, and I remember calling Lieutenant Bogardus, and he wanted to know this and that on the radio. I said, no, you need to come here. You know? Yeah. And he'd be asking me another question. I'd say, no, you need to come here. And then he'd ask me another. I'm like, no, you really need to come here. So finally, I think the third time he got it, and he's like, okay, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And I remember him walking up and looking at the scene going, oh, yeah, we need to call state police. There's something wrong here, you know?
Yeah.
So that was definitely awful. But, the nice thing is we found her, and, and we started that. So,
that's right.
And that's part of it.
And at least brought the family some closure. In fact, the family was there hiking that day. They were all hiking, trying to find her that day. So at least they went there.
Yep, I remember talking to her daughter. It was Thanksgiving Day. We found her.
Yeah.
And we were all having Thanksgiving
meal at AMC.
It was pretty dang good, too.
It wasn't bad, I don't ever want them to know that, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah,
it was
bad.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so, it's still unsolved today. That was a sad one.
That never got resolved, which was too bad. So the other big one was Patrick McCarthy.
Yeah, you had a lot to do with that.
That was a multi-day search that went on. That was tough to do, and it was difficult to deal with the family.
And how old was Patrick?
10 that day. The day we found him, he was 10. So it was his birthday. That was a bizarre case where a kid got into a fight with his brother and just took off looking for a bridge that he was just too far north of. He kept going on the river trying to find that bridge. It went right up into a saddle of a mountain. He was back miles from his house and finally died of exposure. That search for days, multiple resources and helicopters and thousands of people. That's still to this day, I think, one of the largest line search.
Yeah, I remember the buses. I had to
people
take teams on a bus and try to conduct all kinds.
We covered hundreds of miles up there in that wilderness, in Lincoln. Finally, in October on his birthday, and then it would go on for years because the family thought that someone killed him and dragged him way back up out of fear. It's amazing what people can do when they're scared.
Yeah, you actually brought the FBI back up in there.
I did. Yeah, that was actually, if you could say it's a funny story. They wanted to. The family felt that Fish and Game and State Police, years and years later, they felt that they weren't getting the answers because obviously they wanted someone to blame for this, and because we weren't producing that, we were trying to cover up for who did it. And so there was this whole conspiracy theory that went on for years. The U.S. Attorney was involved, the Attorney General was involved, and of course there was no conspiracy and no effort by any agency to cover anything up. But you had to air all of that out. And so part of that was the FBI became involved, and this young girl agent from the FSATIC came up, and she decided that some months, almost a year later, she wanted to go back up to the exact location. Of where we found this boy, and we had marked it with GPSs, and due to the technology today and some skills of navigation, we could get her right back to the very spot. And so she had called us and tried to set that up with the major crime investigator at the time, Chuck West, and myself, because I had found it, to take her back to the site. And she kept saying, can you do that? Can we count on you doing it? I said, oh yeah, we're going to walk you right back up in there. So I told her what to wear for clothes, and I think she kind of laughed. I don't think she had any idea that it was going to be an all-day hike to get back there.
Right.
So we left at 7 o'clock that morning, and at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock that afternoon, we were standing at the site. She was quite a bit. So anyway, she did what she needed to do there, and we're hiking out. We're probably within a mile of being out. It's just the three of us coming back. And one of us steps on a ground. We stop for a minute because she wants to know on my GPS how close we are to getting out, because she's winded. She's had enough. It's been a long day.
A long hike.
And while we're standing there talking, I think Chuck had stepped on a ground hornet's nest. Suddenly we're covered, all of us, in hornets, and they're stinging. And so I bolted, ran for the brook, jumped in the brook. I got stung 8 or 9 times, but I jumping in the brook ended that. She got stung multiple times. Chuck got stung a number of times. So it took a few minutes for that whole area to settle down so that we could get back together. And I remember when I first got back to her, I said I could see that she'd been stung multiple times. She had those swollen spots all over. Are you okay? And she said, I think so. And I said, First thing I said to her, I said, "Do you have any allergies against bee stings or hornet stings?" She said, "No, I've never had an issue." And I remember her telling me early in the day she'd gone out west hunting, and so she was an outdoors girl.
Right, she was in a greenhorn.
Never had an issue. But within seconds of that conversation, I said to Chuck had been stung, and I said, "We got about a mile to go to get out of here. You guys have a problem. These are a lot of stings. We're all going to end up at the emergency room, right?" And
yeah.
Within seconds of that conversation, she is starting to say to me, Kevin, I don't feel good. She says, my stomach's getting upset, and she was beginning to go into anaphylactic shock. And we panicked because there's nothing you can do with that.
No.
She's going to die. Her airway's going to close. She's going to die. You need to get her epinephrine, or an EpiPen, some sort of immediate relief for this, or she's not going to make it.
Right.
So we Chuck takes her pack. He, without me saying anything to Chuck, he understands the urgency now of getting her out of there. And we are scurrying, and she is vomiting. She's getting sicker and sicker. Finally, she's getting to the point where she's stumbling and falling, so I put her on my back, and I'm carrying her down. We're running down for the trailhead. We finally get through to a dispatcher who calls Lincoln PD, and they come up with a PD, and I'll never forget it. The police officer from Lincoln in full uniform with a vest, bulletproof vest, is running up the trail
up through the woods,
with a bag with an EpiPen in it to give it to us. So we meet him. That poor kid, it was in the summer, and he was dying by the time he got to us. When I was dying, lugging her out, we immediately jab her with an EpiPen. She's wheezing at this point, so we were getting close. And he jabs her with an EpiPen, opens her out, and then we bolt for the ambulance. We get her down there, we throw her in the ambulance, and they're treating her. They're going to go to Plymouth Hospital, and they're not wasting time. And Chuck and I are just collapsed on the ground behind the ambulance, breathing heavy and carrying. People are bringing us drinks. And finally I look over at him. I said, "Can you imagine if that poor kid died?" I said, "Not only would that be a tragic thing for us and the family, but I said, the McCarthy family's going to think, well, the FBI must have got close to this, and now they killed the investigator."
Right.
You know? So anyway, I learned a lot about anaphylactic, a lot more than I needed to know that day. I went to Plymouth because I felt bad for her. She didn't know where she was, and we almost killed her. So I went to Plymouth Hospital in Spear and stayed with her, and they would not let her leave that hospital that night without an EpiPen. Right. She had an allergic reaction, and it would have killed her. So that was amazing.
And someone that's had allergic reaction to that, too. I mean, I got stung and had that.
Yeah, you've had it, right? You carried an EpiPen,
And I kept telling my wife, "No, I'm fine. And then when I get to the hospital,
You're not
the
fine.
guys, he's like, "I would have trached you in 15 minutes." And I'm like, I couldn't even talk to the lady checking in. My tongue was all swollen in my mouth. So now I try to carry an EpiPen all the time, but it's tough too.
Yeah.
So
you got to do
price
it.
Now.
Then it went through the roof, and I'm like, you have no idea what you're doing to people because they got to have that.
Absolutely.
You can't go.
No, you certainly. No, you've had some excitement in the search and rescue mission area, haven't you?
We have.
There's nothing like having one right there with you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, creating one of your own. Oh my God. Yeah, that was awful. I just never imagined anything like that could happen. And it'd be just by luck that something like that would happen.
Right.
But finally, the family had to realize after many investigations into this, there was no conspiracy, nothing. This poor little guy died of exposure. He was scared to death, and he died of exposure.
And that's tough to accept.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Grief does a lot to a lot of different people, as we've seen through our careers. It's tough to deal with, and
and everybody deals with it differently.
Right.
So it makes
that was one of the tough part of our jobs, is telling people those things. And not very often we had to bring the bad news, but every now and then.
We did it more than we wanted to, and the problem was you could never predict how people were going to take it or what the following days would.
Right.
Some of those people became very closely attached to us for a long period of time, and some remain in contact with us to this day. From missions that ended years and years ago. You never know how people. I learned this job has taught me not to judge people, because you don't know how they live, and there's always two sides to every story, and we've seen that.
And the truth usually lies in the middle.
It does. That's exactly right. And you can't, until you've walked a mile in the shoes of these people, you really.
And it teaches you compassion too. That's one thing I think I learned from you and Doug. The sensitivity. To have that compassion for people when they lose a limb. I think early on in my career I didn't have that because I'm familiar with.
Well, we're trained not to have it. You're trained to kind of be a robot and not have any feelings or anything. You just tell people the way it is. That's the facts, and move on to the next case. And that's really not very realistic. That isn't the way people deserve to be treated. That isn't the way you want to treat them. Naturally, you don't want to be treated that way. You don't want to treat others that way. It just doesn't work. We very quickly shed that and do it our own way. And Those were tough messages, and I'm sure even tougher to hear.
Right.
Some of those poor folks that had to. I always viewed it as, at the end of the day, if it were a family member, a loved one of mine, I would want those questions answered. And I'd want to have some place to go to grieve, and I'd want to know where my child or my friend is or my relative. And we provided that service by bringing these people home. So, there were times you felt bad because you didn't save a life, but you still brought home a family member to their family, which every single family would tell you at some point during that grieving process that was helpful. So that was a good thing. Feel like it was.
Some of the other things I learned is to keep them involved and keep them up to date.
Yeah, you were good about that. Yep. Yeah, you kept them right involved, and you were a good one for developing lifelong friendships with them, and that's because of that, because of the way you treated them. So the Canadian family's a good example of that, and that long drawn.
Yeah, the Courier case.
Yeah, and they remain friends today.
And to be honest with you, I never thought we were going to recover him. So I wanted to make sure the family knew all the effort we put in, because it was extreme.
Right. That's right. Yeah, it sure was.
We went on and on and on and on, and I just never thought we were going to see him recovered. And we did, 4 or 5 weeks later. So sometimes it took us 20 years to solve them, but we always, like the truck in the river in Errol. The poor guy disappeared 20 years ago, and it took us 20 years to find him, but he was found and brought home. So it's important answers to this stuff. Right, and that's kind of the tool sets we've been given. With doing the dive team, the scoot team, the sonar team, the underwater camera. It's kind of been our forte to do that, and I think we're pretty good at it too.
I think we're very good at it. Yeah, and I think again, other agencies, in that case, state police, realized that we had the tools and the knowledge to do that, gave us the shot, and it solved their case super.
Right, and I'm sure other states are similar. I know operates on similar.
Yeah.
Who better to be in the woods than the game wardens looking in the woods?
That's right.
We get the tool set, we get the know-how. So I think that makes it right.
It's crazy not to take advantage of opportunities and skills.
Yeah.
Not something we always did, though.
No, I would totally agree.
They didn't. It was all these things, political reasons that got in the way. We're all in the same, trying to do the same
law
thing.
Enforcement's developed manner too. It's not to hold everything inside. It's the counseling, the talking.
Right.
Certainly that's made me survive my career.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you wouldn't have without it. That's right.
Nope, certainly would have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so search and rescue and snowmobiles. We've done a lot of miles on snowmobiles together.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
A lot of crazy miles on snowmobiles.
There isn't a winter that goes by when I don't think of that now. And every day we'd leave the house on a sled. You wouldn't drive your cruiser. You'd be leaving on a sled, and you'd return on a sled.
Yeah.
Our clothing smelled like carbon monoxide. And
I don't miss those days.
Oh, your hands were split from the cold, and we rode in all kinds of weather and conditions. Everything from rain to extreme cold. And now they say, you want to go up north and ride? And
we had our share.
Yeah, let me think about it. No, I'm all set, thanks. Yeah. Done that. Been there, done that. Yeah. Although I enjoy it to this day, but not every day.
Right. And you can pick and choose your days. Where...
If it's a cold day and I don't want to ride now, I can say, no, I don't want to go out there and ride, where before we had to do it every day.
Yeah, one of these weekends it was like -20, and I'm like, I'm so happy I'm retired, because this would have been my detail weekend.
That's right.
I would have been in Pittsburgh.
You would have been
having to ride a snowmobile and having to ride tickets at -20.
Yeah.
And not enjoying it at all.
No. And you can improve the sleds and the clothing and the boots all you want. It's still, at the end of the day, it's still 20 below, and it's too damn cold to be out there.
Yeah.
Doing all that. But you're right.
And I think
we had sleds. They didn't have reverse. They didn't have blue. When I think about those days, they didn't have blue lights. We'd wave up and wave up.
We'd pull right next to them and wave them over.
Yeah, and wave like crazy men. And, sometimes people thought we were nuts and trying to attack them. And, oh, my goodness, it's a wonder we could get anybody to stop for anything.
Yeah, and I know we got lights on the sides, and I thought that was awful stupid. I'm like, why do you need lights on the side? But as you're starting to pull out, the first time Chris Egan had lights on the side of his snowmobile, he pulls out. I'm like, oh, those are pretty handy.
Yeah. When another guy's coming at you, 60 miles an hour.
I guess that's pretty handy to have those on the side now. So
you just never know.
You just never know. Not just facing forward. So we definitely spent a lot of time out there, and I remember that one time rolling up on a fatal snow machine accident at.
Yep. Yeah, coming home at night. Yeah. Yeah, it went down over there. We're driving home, and you're in a trance because it's quiet, and it's been quiet for a long time. Well, quiet in that you're not seeing any other traffic.
And the only thing you're roaming your own snowmobile.
Yeah, and you're kind of into that kind of mode where we're going along really good. The trail's nice, and you're kind of daydreaming, really thinking about, okay, tomorrow we're going to get home tonight finally and get into bed where it's warm.
We weren't that far away.
We weren't too far away. We were up in Nash, and we came around that corner, and here comes a woman up over the bank. Just remember that, covered in blood, screaming and waving her arms. Her boyfriend or husband, I don't remember which, is down over the bank. Is just he's dead.
Yeah,
and we rolled right up onto that. That was and ended up doing CPR and
your radio was dead, so I had to.
You had to do the radio while I did CPR.
You did CPR.
That was a nice touch.
Yeah.
And then you couldn't stop doing it because the poor woman is standing there, and even though he was long gone by the time we got there, that was
definitely No, we investigated a lot of those tragic events on snowmobiles.
Yes, we did. Every year we'd have a few of those.
They're so unforgiving when you hit a tree or another sled. I mean, it's just...
And again, people come up to have fun. They don't think about that stuff. And then in a wink of an eye, life changes, for them and their family. So, there was some real tragedy.
And those sleds are fast, let's face it.
Incredibly fast and dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they'd ride across Back Lake up there and crash every weekend. We'd have a fatal up there, before that law changed. We haven't had a fatal on Wood. We haven't had a fatal up there in years.
Yeah,
so.
that was crazy every weekend.
Every weekend, every Friday night, they'd do it.
Run out of lake and crash into the trees
shoreline.
and die.
Yeah, they'd go across that lake in the dark and outrun their headlight. And by the time they realized the trail, it was hit that bang. And then it was just a crack. Yeah. Everything from a 12-year-old kid to a 60-year-old man.
The one that always blows my mind is the one we had on First Lake. A girl got dropped off by her boyfriend.
To flag him.
Yeah, he was out in the middle. He wanted to open up his sled, so he leaves her in the middle of a black lake as a snowmobile comes across the lake and ends up hitting her.
Yeah.
The odds of that are just blows my mind, And I'm sure he didn't expect to see anybody out on that lake either. Just
in the same case, outran his headlight.
Absolutely,
he's way
couldn't
faster.
React.
By the time he sees what's in the headlight, you got no chance.
Right,
of stopping.
And they both died. The girl he hit and himself.
And him, killed them both.
So just another tragic thing that that's just one of those things you never even think of.
No, no, not at all.
I'm sure. Neither one of them thought of it.
That's a definition of a freak accident, quite frankly. There were a lot of those. There were, it was bizarre.
And some of them were low speeds. I remember investigating ones that were like 35 miles an hour hitting a tree, and he was dead.
Well, as we used to tell them in safety class, no matter what you do in a snow machine, just like a motorcycle, you're going to get ejected.
Right.
There's just no way around it. So you don't have to be going 80 miles an hour to kill you. You can be going 40 and fly, and the heaviest part of your body is your head. That's what's going to hit first.
Yeah.
People would break their neck. It was awful. Even with helmets and safety. And it was a lot worse at the beginning when it was out of control. Remember that? The governor was on us. We had 15 or 16 fatalities in one winter, and everybody had a fit.
Yeah, we were ahead of Maine in fatalities.
Oh, yeah, and we had countywide meetings, and we put this whole plan together, and we were in the height of that. We were going to start enforcing snow machine laws, and that's all we were going. At the end of the day, we got a handle on it.
We put a dent in it.
We did.
Absolutely.
We got a handle on it. It about killed every one of us, but we worked a lot of hours to do it, but it worked.
It did.
We had people looking around every corner for us running radar.
Yeah. And that Snowdio that year that me, you, and Brian worked, I think it was 105 tickets and warnings, and there wasn't a whole lot of warnings.
Yeah, we ran out of
paper.
Yeah, we were hiding in the woods that time. Remember that?
Yeah, we were getting everybody in line. Yeah. Everybody got a ticket.
The best one was dug under a white sheet. That was good. Sitting on the side of the trail with a white sheet over the snow machine.
It was pretty effective.
It was very effective. Yeah. Very unfair. Very effective.
Drive right by at 80, but they whip off his light sheet and off he'd go.
We did that until the call finally went into the colonel on a Monday morning and said, hey, that's what these guys are doing. He's like, there's no way my people are doing that. And he found out that, in fact, one of them was.
That's smart.
Oh, yeah, it was smart. Yeah, and it worked well.
Yeah. I won't give any of the guys this time any ideas of what to do.
No, that's right. Well, and we would later figure out that if you just stood on the trail and you didn't move, people wouldn't see you anyway.
They're going too fast.
We went through all these different phases of hiding and trying to do all these different things and try to blend into the scenery and go off trail and get stuck and try to hide behind. We cut fir trees
Delayne with
down
his stop sign, that was my always favorite one.
Yeah, he'd throw the stop sign.
He'd put his stop sign up and they were supposed to stop. And if they didn't, he'd get really mad.
Yeah, then he tried to get him for running a stop sign. One he threw up. Yeah.
Oh, I hope he listens to this podcast.
I hope he does,
too. One of my favorite things. Well,
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we can wrap this one up, but I hope you come back with me. And there's
I'd
so
love
much
to
more
come
to
back.
talk. And, but we've been talking for a good portion here. So we'll wrap it up. But thanks, Colonel. And the next time, maybe we'll talk about Colonel stuff.
There you go. That's right. Yeah, I got some great stories for that, too.
Yeah,
so.
I think I'd rather talk about the good old days.
Me too.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and,
we did.
I really appreciate it. So, hey, thank you again.
No problem, bub.
Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other game wardens on our adventures protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch.